Good day, everyone. My name is Arnaud Roux. I'm the Early Engagement Manager for Subsea 7 for Asia Pacific region. Subsea 7 is an offshore construction company headquartered in UK, which recently opened an office in Seoul as well as a legal entity in South Korea this year with the aim to support the development of floating offshore wind in the region. So today I will present you Subsea 7, the company and our activities, and what it takes to do marine construction for floating offshore wind in the context of South Korea. So Subsea 7 started offshore construction 60 years ago to support oil and gas developer to access to offshore field. After 60 years of activities, Subsea 7 has become one of the main leader in offshore construction activities, totaling up to 5 billion revenue in 2022, with more than 30,000 people working for Subsea 7. The amount of assets that are available to deliver our offshore constructions, which are generally vessels for Subsea 7, is more than 35, which makes Subsea 7 the company with the most available assets to deliver offshore construction. Our activities are worldwide in all generally oil and gas and renewable hubs, which, for example, for the Asia area, Subsea 7 has its main office in Kuala Lumpur to deliver the oil and gas market, as well as its main office for renewable located in Taiwan, where we have been active in delivering offshore wind construction. So offshore wind is obviously a large part of Subsea 7 DNA. This being said, the backbone and most of the revenue that Subsea 7 generates are generally coming from oil and gas activities or CCUS activities that are connected to it. So you can see that's the two main pillars on the left hand side of this slide. As I mentioned, 75% of our revenue are generally coming from those activities. In the regions, more specifically in South Korea, Subsea 7 has participated to the installation of the Donghae project, multiple phases, and is as well participating to discussions about the decommissioning of Donghae and potentially its repurposing into CCUS scheme to capture CO2 from South Korea. Moving to offshore wind construction, you will see in the next slide years of experience in bottom fixed construction, which would generally be the development near shore, and as well some intense activities growing in the floating wind sides, generally further out of the coast, which will be the main focus for today's discussion. Hydrogen is also seen as a strong market in the future for offshore construction. However, this is relatively in the making and will not be discussed today. So our history in offshore wind construction started 10 years ago when the first offshore wind projects were developed in Northern Europe. So in 2009, Subsea 7 started to support some offshore wind construction development, partnering with other players to be able to have the relevant assets like Seaway Heavy Lifting for the heavy lift of the jacket, CM Offshore Contractor for the cable laying. The activities in offshore construction has grown up to a 1 billion award project, our first 1 billion award in 2016, which soon after Subsea 7 decided to consolidate its activities and create its independently capable company to deliver the engineering, procurement, construction, and installation (EPCI) of such projects. So Seaway 7 was created, integrating some of our partners and delivering offshore wind construction in Northern Europe and beyond. As you can see, in 2019, our footprint has expanded to Taiwan, and to the USA. In 2020, that will be the last example, we've been awarded Seagreen, which was a 2 gigawatt project, which has just recently been completed. So throughout this history, Subsea 7 has achieved an impressive track record, thousands of kilometers of inter-array cable laid thanks to our specialized cable lay assets, more than 30 substations transported, installed on their foundation to be able to export the electricity over long distances up to the shore, as well as an impressive more than 800 foundation for the wind turbine installed to total up to 8 gigawatt supported by Subsea 7 over the last 10 years. Talking about floating offshore wind, as I mentioned previously, it's a relatively nascent market. Subsea 7 started 6 years ago with the installation of the Hywind Scotland prototype. Subsea 7 has delivered the power cable installations, and since then created a dedicated business unit within Subsea 7, which is actively maturing our knowledge, reaching in 2021 a key milestone by becoming a partner over a development. We are now partnering with Ørsted on the Salamander project in order to understand the challenges of those new projects and to support the developer to achieve their goal of delivering floating offshore wind farm. In 2022, Subsea 7 has achieved the installation of the cable of the Hywind Tampen floating project, as well as created opening its office in Seoul. And in 2023, the team in Malaysia, in South Korea, in Europe is actively supporting feeds and studies to support the developer to mature and hopefully take decisions on such floating offshore wind development. So this quick but very impressive slide showing our track records late last year. This is Q4 2022. As you can see, the completion of the Seagreen project, which was performed in Europe. However, most of the fabrication has actually came from Asia predominantly, yards in Asia, yards in Middle East, transported by Subsea 7 assets up to the final location in Scotland. You can also see an asset at the bottom of this picture, which is not a Subsea 7 asset. And this is to stress the importance that in order to deliver those projects, partnering with the necessary stakeholders is key, as the size of those projects generally calls for multiple assets that are rarely available by one of the contractors. So partnering is a key element of the delivery of such project. Closer to the region, Yunlin for Taiwan project, where Subsea 7 is delivering the EPCI of the inter-array cable on the Yunlin development, which is manufactured by our partners in Japan, Sumitomo, as well as one of our preferred suppliers in South Korea, which is LS Cable. The cables is transpooled on Subsea 7 chartered asset, the Maersk Connector, which is located permanently in Taiwan to deliver the offshore wind construction in this region. The last one is the Hywind Tampen, the largest floating offshore wind farm, which Subsea 7 has installed the inter-array cable for such development, 88 megawatt, which is big, but is very small compared to what is expected to happen in South Korea. Let's have a look at the South Korea environment. So South Korea offshore wind construction is expected to grow significantly due to the government ambitions to move into a decarbonized energy mix, as well as the blessed winds that is available in the region. Bottom fixed development will happen. This is a known business. This will predominantly start in the west coast of South Korea due to shallower water available. And the reason why today I would like to focus on floating offshore wind is because most of the stakeholders acknowledge that South Korea will probably be one of the pioneers into large-scale floating offshore wind farm development. And this will start on the east side of South Korea. This is due to the fact that South Korea best winds are located in these regions where the water depths are actually deeper than what bottom fish can achieve. And the reason why South Korea is seen as one of the most promising regions is as well that the coast is highly industrialized, which will make it capable of delivering the complex products that have to be delivered to trigger those floating offshore wind development. You can see on this picture, each of the circles represents some of the most mature wind farms that are expected to happen in the next decade. So in the next slides, we'll have a look at one of those circles, which represent a large-scale floating offshore wind farm, generally 500 megawatt for each of them. So to achieve those 500 megawatts in those offshore remote environment, very large wind turbines are generally considered. In the range of 15 megawatt is a typical configuration, which has to be hosted on a suitable floater. And as you can imagine, the size of those turbines calls for very large structures. An example here is a typical 4-column floater would hardly fit on an Olympic stadium and would weigh between 3,000 to 5,000 tons of weight in air once being fabricated. Once integrated with the wind turbine, the overall stacked assembly would reach up to 275 meters and will have to be towed and installed to site. And this is where the marine construction starts. Subsea 7 is partnering with fabrication yard, for example, Samkang for the Total Greywell project, as well as partnering with integrators, Technip Energy for the same project. Once the assembly is completed, Subsea 7 takes over and starts the marine construction with the mooring, the towing, the hookup of the floater, as well as the connection of each of the floater together through inter-array cable. So let's have a look at this marine construction. We'll first start with the offshore mooring system. There are plenty of solutions that are available. However, due to the shallow water conditions, the clay and the seabed geotechnical characteristics, it is expected that for South Korea, drag anchor or suction anchors will make most of the anchor type that will be needed to moor the floater. So we'll have a look. We'll take a generic example with a suction pile where the bottom chain will be connected through the suction pile via H-link or ball grab dedicated component. Once this is completed, the vessel would generally lay the bottom chain and start to connect a polyester rope to cover the full distance of the mooring line. The main reason for the polyester rope is that the chain size needed for such large floaters is critically large, which is a challenge from a cost and procurement perspective to deliver them to the region. And for those reasons, we generally see polyester rope as being a good alternative to moor the floater for floating offshore wind. Those polyester rope has to be supported by buoyancy modules, which are regularly laid in order to prevent them to touch the seabed and to stabilize as well the tensions into the in-place floater that will be installed. The polyester rope will be laid over its entire distance. A mooring line is generally located around 800 to 900 meters away from its anchor, where the floater will eventually be located. So this is performed via our dedicated anchor handling ton that will lay the product and abandon them on the seabed, wet store them until the floater is ready to come. Bear in mind that this operation will have to be repeated multiple times, as each of the floater, depending on its configuration, its requirement, may need 3 mooring line, 4, 5, 6, even 8 mooring lines could be envisaged, so that's a very repetitive task that has to be completed. Then dedicated anchor handling tug. The power needed for such asset is generally relatively large, which calls for importing assets from other regions to be able to lay the mooring line and tow the floater to its final site. So the assets will come and tow the floater to the wet stored mooring line. Then the top chain hanging on the floater would be recovered on the back deck of the anchor handling tug, where it will be connected to the permanent polyester rope with its chain extremity. So this will connect the floater to the mooring line, while two other tugs would generally maintain the floater in its positions. Once the connection is made, the mooring line has to be tensioned up to the design requirement. The main reason is to stabilize the floater in a relatively stretched configuration, as well as make sure that the polyester rope is stretched enough for the expected service for this specific configuration. So it will be stretched through an inline tensioning system, and then the excess of chain pulled through this tensioning system will be abandoned and cut and recover on the seabed. So this operation will be repeated multiple times until most of the floaters are assembled, and then will the connection of each of the floater made via the electric cable. So here comes the inter-array cable installation, which, on the contrary to bottom fixed development, the inter-array cable have to absorb the dynamic motions of the floater, as well as to resist to the offset or the excursion of the floater that will happen during strong wind, strong current in the region. For this reason, the inter-array cable have to take a specific configuration at its extremity. It is generally made of bend stiffener that prevents the fatigue into the cable, as well as buoyancy module that will absorb the variation, and some anchors, tethered base that will prevent the cable to move too far away as well when strong currents are happening. It is important to stress that those dynamic cables are generally still under qualification by the industry. We are looking after supply chain in the region to make sure that the local suppliers are capable of delivering qualified product. And this is why the configuration of such product to be able to control the fatigue is a critical element of the development of floating offshore wind farm. So dedicated cable layers will transport and unspool the cables, install all the ancillaries to eventually hand it over to the floater, where a winch will perform the pull-in for the final configuration of the floating wind farm, where all wind turbines are anchored and connected to each other via some inter-array cable. So those operations may look simple, and let's say it frankly, yes, those are simple operations. Subsea 7 is very familiar with its assets with such operation. However, one of the main challenges of floating offshore wind farm is the size and the scale of such development. What you can see on the right-hand side is a typical floating offshore wind farm in one of those circles that we mentioned previously. Each of the stars here represents one floater anchored with its mooring line 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, as I mentioned previously. Then each of the yellow spider that connects them between each other are the dynamic inter-array cable connecting each of the products. And the size, the scale of such development is actually massive compared to what has been previously delivered. Managing 30 to 80 floaters with all their mooring lines will mean more than hundreds of anchors. And you can look in the picture below and see how big one of those anchors could be to anchor the floater. The chains, more than 30,000 of tons of chains are expected, the ropes and eventually the hundreds of kilometers of dynamic cables coming with their ancillaries. So this is the main challenge of the marine construction, is to be able to manage the procurement of those equipments, to transport them, store them, handle them, and eventually install them efficiently, coordinated with the fabrication and the integration partner to be able to deliver an efficient installation and delivery model for the floating offshore wind farm. And we talk about years of offshore fabrication, which comes with a strong capex, and the objective to optimize those operations is critical to the delivery of such project. So this is about marine construction. This is the last slide. As a conclusion words, I would like to remind that indeed South Korea is strategically positioned to deliver the first floating offshore wind project potentially worldwide. This being said, some challenges remain, and Subsea 7 is currently working actively with the developers to understand the challenges, the risk, and propose the best delivery model to achieve an efficient, from a capex and schedule and safe perspective, efficient delivery of such projects. So early engagement with the developers is one of the key aspects to make those floating offshore wind farms possible. Similarly, the engagement with the supply chain is critical to be ready once those projects move to execution. And Subsea 7 is actively looking at preferably local partners that can deliver the necessary solution for such projects, but as well as international partners, in order to be ready, pre-book the manufacturing slot, and make sure that those projects, in a very tense supply chain environment, will be able to be executed smoothly. So those are the key activities that Subsea 7 is currently performing, and do not hesitate to contact Subsea 7 should you be interested to know more about our capability to support the development, or for us to know more about your capabilities to provide solutions for such delivery. So I hope this presentation was of interest to you. Do not hesitate to contact Daniel Cho, who is located in Seoul, should you have further needs of discussion with Subsea 7. Thank you very much.